All right, welcome. Thanks for coming. I think many of you have been at this event in years past. This year we got some new stuff, so it won't be the same old stuff that you might get from Jim up at the college every year when you go for training. The most important things. First of all, bathrooms. Out the door to the left and around. Men, women, okay? Pretty simple. Anybody tones out while you're in here, sit still. Don't everybody jump up, all right? Whoever tones out, hit the door. Get out of here. Go do your thing. We asked a lot of you to bring safety glasses. A couple of the demonstrations you're going to see tonight, safety is important to us here at the store. You must be wearing safety glasses to watch that demonstration, okay? If you didn't bring a pair, we've got some extras, all right? I'm happy to say that this group, in the last couple of years, I just learned in the last couple of days that there's legislation that's been introduced in Michigan to help you identify one of these, and it's going to be on the license plate. Okay, so legislation has been introduced to either put a sticker on the plate or actually have the plate printed, or, you know, so when you walk up to the car, as you know, the first thing you have to do is identify the car now, okay? So hopefully that will get passed. It's a bipartisan bill that's been introduced, and I'm happy to say that you all that have been here in the past have helped push that through. A couple of thank yous I have to throw out here. First of all, it's to my team of people that are here. You'll see them walking around helping out in our display. So we all believe in safety. We got some people that are first responders themselves. I even invited the local Ford dealer down. Derek is here. The Ford guys that usually come, the engineers, couldn't make it because they're on a travel restriction because of the strike. So Derek, I got to admit, his dad, before I got in the car business 48 years ago, his dad and I, we drank a couple of beers together. I wasn't in the car business at all, but so next generation, actually right next to Derek's my son, Matt, and so he'll be taking this over at some time. So, and I got to thank Al. Everybody knows Al Welsheimer. She's helped a lot in putting this together and getting you all here. One thing, do we have any rookies here that are just starting out in the Come on up here. Do you know what this is?
It's a hook.
It's a hook. Give him a hand. He passed the test. All right. What I have learned in the last while, especially Al explained this to me, I said, this hook, every department that's here should get a hook. I don't know how many departments we got, but if you don't have one of these on one of your fire trucks, you need them. The idea is to, if you got a car burning in a garage, electric car or any car, to sneak up behind it and just throw that underneath and try and hook anything to get that car out of the garage. So maybe it would be save the house, so who cares about the car? I said, well, who does that? Al explained to me whoever the rookie is. So, my friend, there's your present. Take that to bed with you tonight. Get to know you. All right, so next I'd like to introduce Jim Cousineau. Jim's from North Central Michigan College. Most of you guys know him. He's been doing this for a long time. He comes from, originally he's been a fireman and a policeman and everything in between, I think. So Jim's been a great help. He's up at North Central, our partner in doing this. So I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thanks, Dave. I have like 2 minutes here. We did this a couple years ago. We did it again tonight. On January 20th, I'm going to have this on the table back there. You can sign up and smoke. It should be approved by tomorrow or the day after. We're doing a training here on January 20th. We're going to simulate 4 vehicles. It'll be regular vehicles. We're going to tape up and make it where it's going to look like you have a battery underneath it. You're going to have disconnects in the correct spot based on the vehicle, and you're going to respond to it as though you're responding to a vehicle fire or a vehicle accident. You're going to be getting the dispatch information. You'll respond to it. you review your scene, you do your overview, you do your command, and you look at your out circles and you start identifying how to respond to that vehicle based on the emergency vehicle, the electric vehicle response app that there is out there. So we're going to simulate real world as close as we can. Make sure we stabilize in the correct spots. We're not stabilizing on the battery. Make sure we disconnect properly. If it's a quick extrication, we're going to do extrication where we will pull people out, whether it be rapid or whether it be traditional. But identifying where the power is on the vehicles, it will be, and this will be hosted by Al and by the training chiefs. We're going to be asking for within our counties to support this. We started to look at, we have enough training chiefs in these areas. We can do this based on the training we have, our partnership with GM. So we're going to be having that here. We're going to be offering the fire CEUs plus 4 EMS CEUs. We're going to try to get up to 6. We won't be able to get all of them. But we have on operations, patient assessment, trauma. So we will have CEUs that day. We have 24 people right now. If we have more people that want to sign up for it, we will go ahead and have a second event. But right now it is on the schedule. We should be approved for register. No cost. We're going to be funding it through the RTC and with the local chiefs. We're going to be doing the training for it. But we want to make it real world, so we do a muscle memory, actual hands-on, to now put it in action and the simulation. We're going to be using the hook to actually pull vehicles out. So going through all the mechanisms. So once again, Al will be reaching out to the training chiefs to kind of help form this. We have a lot of expertise and a lot of capacity within our departments. I think we can do a pretty good job putting this together. There's a curriculum for it. That's by NFPA we're going to be using. So it's all going to be validated curriculum for it. With real vehicles, we're going to tape up and the whole shot. Tonight, we are going to put some mirrors under the vehicles. So when you go, take a look at the mirror. Take a look at where the battery is, because that's important for stabilization, where you're going to stabilize the vehicle. Also look at, so when you're walking around the vehicles, take a look at the mirrors as far as where everything is on the vehicles underneath. The stations, we have a Rivian, we have Chevys, we have Tesla, we have Fords throughout. We have a couple stations, we have a battery that's in a crate that actually has the cover off it. Nobody touched the battery. But it kind of shows you the capacity that we have in these units. Thanks once again to all of Dave's team for doing this. And we're going to be blowing off some airbags in the back, which is always a fun time. But it shows the force that's engaged. So when we do this training in January, we're going to have a checklist on things we're going to be looking for when we do this training to make sure everybody gets refreshed on some of this training. I'm going to introduce Mitch, unless Joe arrived.
I don't see him.
It's you.
It's me.
You can't wait.
You get stuck with me.
Mitch Pedersen from GM. He's also a fire chief downstate. He was here last time and has a lot of great experience, and it provides a lot from a leadership perspective on this. So after he gets done, we're just going to break up into groups. There's like 5 or 6 stations. Just break equal. We're not going to put numbers on chairs. So just break equal and do your turn. I think we're 15-minute rotations, Dave?
Yes.
15-minute rotations, so. All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, again, my name is Mitch Pedersen. I'm the Public Safety Engagement Lead for General Motors, right? So what that means is that I get involved in all the programs that General Motors puts on for first responder personnel, right? So police, fire, EMS, 911 communications, all of those things, all right? I retired from the fire service. I spent 28 years with the department in the Metro Detroit area, down in Oakland County, right? Not up here in this beautiful area, down where the traffic's really bad. All right, retired from the fire department, came here to General Motors to be involved in a number of different programs. One of the programs that we put on is GM's EV First Responder Training Program. Now that program was a 4-hour training. We've done that in locations, 25, 26 locations across the country and Canada. This is going to be an abbreviated version of that. We've got the benefit of having some other vehicles here as well for you to see, some other electrified vehicles. But what you're going to find is as we go through each of these different stations, you're going to realize that maybe some of the stuff that you've heard, maybe some of the stuff you've seen on Facebook and these different groups that we see, and believe me, I follow all of them, some of the things that we hear just aren't true, right? This is stuff that we can handle, right? This is stuff as firefighters, EMS personnel, law enforcement, whatever, we can handle these vehicles. We have to understand that there's a few differences, and as long as we recognize those ahead of time, as long as we go to trainings like this, as long as we take advantage of the materials that are available to us ahead of time, we can deal with these vehicles on the roadway just like we deal with any other vehicle. All right? There's a few things that I want to point out. I don't want to take a bunch of time up in front of you as a big group. I'd rather split us into all our groups and spend some time standing in front of the vehicles talking about the important stuff, but a few things I want to point out. You see them floating around in the back right there. How many of you have seen or are familiar with the publicly available rescue documents that are available on all the electrified vehicles? Anybody seen those before? Yeah, they're out there. And they're not just out there for General Motors products, they're out there for the Ford products, they're out there for the Rivian. And there's a bunch of different places you can find them. For GM, you can go to the GMSTC website or GM Service Technical Colleges. We can give information. I think we've got some QR codes that'll take you to the website over here on the table. You can get those documents for General Motors vehicles right off of there. But it's not just GM vehicles riding around the roads, right? It's not even just GM vehicles in this bay right now. We've got a different one here. We've got a Rivian. There's a couple of different sites that you can go to find them for all the different vehicles, where they're aggregated or put into one spot. The place that I typically use is NFPA's website, and we're all familiar with the NFPA website, right? The NFPA website has a list of all of these, and there's hundreds of them, right? It covers EVs, it covers plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, it covers fuel cell vehicles, and anything that's available for the manufacturers, they warehouse there. Now, these documents, if you've looked at them, right, they all look the same. They follow a standardized format for us to use, right? So if we see the GM one, if we look at the one for the Chevy Bolt that's right here, the one that's scrolling on the screen is the one for the Hummer EV, but if we look at the one for the Chevy Bolt and we compare it to the one for the Rivian or for the Ford Mach-E, they're going to look very similar. They follow a standardized format for a reason. So it's easy for us as responders to find the information that we need on them. Now, these are great response tools. If you take anything out of here today, anything at all, go home and look at these. Go back to your stations or wherever you come from and look at these and take some time with just one of them. They're really good response tools, and we want to be familiar with them. If we get on scene and we've never seen a Rivian before, anybody seen a Hummer EV traveling through their community yet? Few, yep, down by where I'm at, they're all over the place. You get in some areas, they've never seen one before. And that thing travels through your community. Somebody's going on vacation or they've moved into the community or whatever, and they get into an accident, you've never seen it. You can bring up that rescue document very easily and find out the information you need, right? Where the first responder disconnect is, or where the airbags are. There's a bunch of great information on there. So they're good response tools, but honestly, I think they're better training tools. For our purposes, I think they're great training tools. If you take one of those documents, if you just take the one for the Bolt, or you take the one for the Rivian, or pick any of them, and go back to your departments, and use that as a station level training, or a company level training, or whatever it is that you do for training, however you organize those trainings, and go through one of those documents with your personnel, it's going to answer a lot of the questions that they have. It's going to put a lot of things to bed that they've seen on the internet, right? Like there's electrification all over the vehicle, and if we cut into them on a normal electrification, we're going to get electrocuted. Not true, right? And we'll see that. We'll go out when we get into different stations. I'll show you the different areas. But the reality is we have to understand the hazard. We have to understand that the battery, the propulsion of this vehicle is a battery that's underneath it by and large, right? Some of the older ones have them in different spots. But as we move forward, it's a big battery underneath the vehicle. Have we ever dealt with hazards underneath the vehicle before? Yeah, my Silverado parked outside has got 23 gallons of gasoline, and I just filled it up down the street. Is that a hazard for us? Yeah, and we know it's there. We recognize that it's there, and we know how to deal with it. The battery is just a different hazard. We take doors off, we cut things, and you'll see if you're watching the video here, that Hummer EV that we took all over the country and across Canada for these trainings, right? We did a partial extrication on that down at the Milford Proving Grounds. We hauled that thing all over the place in that state. We popped the door, we did a dash lift, cut the A-pillar, we did a bunch of different things so that we could show that you could see inside that vehicle in the areas that we do normal extrications, right? Your normal, typical, everyday roadway extrications, T-bone the intersection or whatever it is, and you've got to pop a door and move a dash, you're not going to come in contact with electrified components of that vehicle. They're not running through the doorways, they're not running through the passenger compartment, right? And that's for a reason. It's to protect us from that stuff and to protect that stuff from us, right? We don't want anybody messing with it. So it's tucked away in the vehicle. So the rescue documents, super important. If there's any takeaway today, go back and look at those, all right? So we're going to break into a bunch of different groups here. We're going to rotate around. We've got 15 minutes. I'm going to talk 100 miles an hour, even faster than I'm talking right now, because I want to give you everything that I have as quick as I can so you go back with something.
One thing to lead on to what he was saying, if you go to the NFPA website, there's a QR code on there. We printed them off. We got one in every one of our trucks. Your smartphone, you take a picture of that, and you can go in there and you can find every vehicle, every EV vehicle out there, and you can see all what he was talking about, all the cutting points where not to cut, lift points, etc. So it's a real good tool. We blew them up.
I'm going to give him something free.
In every one of our units, and so it doesn't matter. And the other thing we started doing is because we're starting to see a lot more of these, when you go on these fire alarms at these houses and stuff, or you go to a house and you visit, ask them if they have EV vehicles. Before, we all knew that everybody had a combustible engine vehicle in their garage. Now you don't know what's in there. If you come back and they have an EV vehicle in their vehicle or charging unit in their garage, let Central know and put it in the notes. So when you get dispatched to that house for a fire, they can tell you that they have an electric vehicle in there, potentially, okay?
I'm glad you brought up NFPA. I have one more thing before Dave kicks me out of here. The NFPA website, if you go to the NFPA website and go to the alternative fuels vehicle section, there's a training on there. Takes about 4 hours. You can register for it, costs about $30. But if you register for it and you use the code GMEV1 on a grant from General Motors, you can take that class for free. So go back to your departments. You can scan that QR code. I think that information's in that QR code as well when you bring up the sheet that's in there. But you can go back and take that training for free on General Motors. So GMEV1 on the NFPA website. This is not really a scripted training like we've done in the past, and we spend 4 hours in that training session. So I'm going to try to condense this down and give you the high points, give the important stuff that I think is going to make you safe when you get out there on the road, okay? And whether I talk to this Rivian or I talk to this Chevy Bolt over here, right? I work for General Motors. This is my vehicle. This is ours, right? We produce this. But the truth is I can use this vehicle right here and I can talk about it just the same. There might be a few little differences. I might have to dig around. They made this one really easy. I can find some of the parts that I'm looking for. But the truth is, these vehicles, for the most part, are constructed the same, right? The technology is the same. So when we talk about EV stuff, when we leave here, we can apply that to whatever we encounter on our roadway. So you guys see many EVs in your areas? Some? What do you see mostly? Tesla, right? Why? Been around a long time, right? They were in the market early. They weren't the first in the market, but they popped up and they're all EV companies. So even in my area, we see a lot of Teslas. I live in a GM saturated area, so I do see a lot of GM Bolts and a lot of GM employees driving Hummer EVs and stuff, but truthfully, we see a lot of Teslas on the road. We can find information on the Teslas by going to the Tesla website, by going to the NFPA website. We can go, there's a bunch of other different ones that are out there. I just saw a new one pop up on Facebook today. All right? So there's a bunch of places we can find the information, but our approach to these vehicles as responders should be the same, right? So you're responding to an incident out here on the roadway, you get on scene and you've got a Chevy Bolt or a Hummer EV or a Rivian or anything else involved in a crash. There's some things that I need you to know about this thing, right? So I'll talk about the vehicle construction in a minute, but I want to talk, because I don't want to run out of time and miss the important part here. I want to talk about your approach to the vehicle. Because as responders, right, we have this way that we do things. As you become more experienced as a responder, right, I've got almost 30 years in the business. It becomes kind of second nature, right? You're gathering information from the time your radio or your pager goes off or they tone you out in the station or whatever it is. From the time you're responding until the time you're back safely, you're constantly gathering information, right? And when you arrive on scene, there's things that we just normally do because we're used to internal combustion engine vehicles. What I need you to know is our approach to these vehicles, if anything else, our approach to these vehicles on an incident needs to be different, all right? These vehicles don't make any sound, right? So if you pull up and there's another vehicle running on the roadway, it's pretty easy for you to determine whether the vehicle is running and ready to drive over top of you or your crew, right? So as you arrive on scene in your engine or your patrol car or your ambulance or whatever it might be, and you're gathering that information that we do as responders kind of subconsciously, you're putting that response puzzle together in your head, right? How many of you have arrived on scene and thought to yourself, I better shut that car off because it's still running? You didn't really look for that, but you noticed it. You noticed something. You either heard it or you saw the exhaust fumes coming out of the back. But again, these vehicles don't make any noise, right? And they don't produce any exhaust. There's not even an exhaust pipe, right? There's no muffler. There's nothing being burned here. So we lose the ability to make that determination. Or how many of you arrived on scene before and thought to yourself, I better make sure that vehicle's in park? Because as you passed by and parked your engine or your vehicle or whatever else, you saw the brake lights on. You weren't exactly looking for that, but that's what your mind is trained to do. So you step off your truck and you go over there and you want to put it in park. But keep in mind that these things don't exactly have an idle speed, so an absence of brake lights doesn't mean that this thing is in park. It's just waiting. It could potentially be waiting for somebody to step on it. These are electric motors, right? So with an internal combustion engine, there's a little bit of an idle speed. If it's sitting there and it can go, it'll want to go a little bit. With these, often just a little bit of incline is going to inhibit that. They're electric motors. They're waiting for you to tell them what to do. You want to go, push. You want to go faster, push harder. That's how they work, right? So they could just be sitting there in propulsion mode, in drive, ready to drive over top of you, and you have none of the indicators that you have on an internal combustion engine. So your approach to the vehicle needs to be the way that we learned it, right? I learned it 30 years ago, right? Approach from the safe zones. We got pretty comfortable. Yeah, that vehicle's off, getting in front of it. We got to go back to the old school stuff. Approach the vehicle from the safe zones. Over here, it's not going to run over me, right? On the other side, it's not going to run over me. And we can secure these vehicles pretty easily. So if we look inside and the vehicle's still in drive, put it in park. If the vehicle is still on, you can see the dashboard's lit up, right? It's ready to go, shut it off. And at that point, that vehicle's pretty secure, right? We're reasonably certain that the vehicle's not going to drive over top of us. The last thing you can do is take the key fob out. Once you put it in park and shut it off, you can take the key fob out of there, right? And then the vehicle can't even be restarted. But I'm not asking you to dig around through somebody's purse. If my wife's got a key fob in her purse, good luck finding it, right? Somewhere in the bottom full of stuff. It could be in there. I'm pretty comfortable by making sure that it's in park or putting it in park and shutting it off. I'm pretty comfortable it's not going to drive over my personnel at that point, all right? So your approach to the vehicle when you have an EV on scene is important. Now, how do we identify that it's an EV, right? If we're going to approach it like an EV, we have to know that it's an EV. How do we identify that? No grill in the front, right? The absence of a grill. There's a few that have some form of a grill that makes it look like one, but the grill, the front end definitely looks different, right? You can spot an EV coming down the road from the front of it, absolutely. Anything else? Absence of an exhaust pipe, for sure. Anything else?
Placard on the back.
Placard, something on there, right? You've got badging on vehicles. We're all pretty good, right? This is the business we're in. We're all pretty good at learning vehicles. We know different things. So we know that a Chevy Bolt, right, is probably electrified, but some of them have models that are electrified and not electrified. So typically they're signified by some sort of identification. They've got a blue E or something else, right? My neighbor's just got a Chrysler Pacifica hybrid minivan, and you can see that my neighbor on one side's got a white one, the neighbor on the other side's got a black one that's a hybrid. You can see that the logo is a little bit different. It's got some blue on there, it's got some color to it, right? So we can identify that. How else could we know? If it's a General Motors product, thank you very much.
There's an example, because your partner didn't make it. I don't have copies.
Nope, these are fine.
Boards, so you can show that the similarity.
Yep. Okay, I've got one running in the back. Lost my train of thought there. Keelan.
You got 3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay, 3 minutes. All right. Anyway, the other way that you can know if it's a General Motors product is OnStar is going to tell you that, right? Anybody familiar with OnStar? Anybody have it in their vehicles? It's a telematics system, right, that has all kinds of vehicle information, goes to a live advisor when something bad happens, that advisor calls your dispatch center. One of the data points that's available is the propulsion type of the vehicle. One of the things that's highlighted, right, because we just make the assumption most vehicles at this point are internal combustion engines, one of the things that's highlighted at this point is it's an electrified product, right? So they'll be telling your dispatch center, we have a Chevy Bolt, it's an electrified vehicle involved in a crash at, I'm not from up here, whatever this road is and whatever that road is, right, at the intersection. So you'll have some, what's that? That's exactly, yeah, that's been my experience too with dispatch. So that's the information you'll get. You should be getting some information on OnStar equipped vehicles that tells you that you're responding to an electrified product. What's that? You're right. And that's an issue that we know, right? I experienced the same thing where I came from. Dispatch had a lot more information than I had, right? And you find that out when you go back to write the report and you look at the dispatch card and say, man, it would have been nice to know that ahead of time. But today, what's changing? Anybody familiar with the terms or term next gen 911 or next generation 911? We're getting that across the country. If you went and talked to your dispatch director today, they tell you that's top of mind for them. That's the biggest thing they have going on in the communications center. And what that allows is a data transfer, right? That instead of information being relayed like it's been for 100 years by telephone into your dispatch center, it's going to be sent electronically if it's available. And there's all kinds of things, not just vehicle telematics, but the OnStar data can be transmitted electronically. And what's that mean for us as responders? Are you guys using any systems like I Am Responding or Bricks or any of those different things, notification systems? If you are, that could be sent out to you and you could have that stuff on your phone. And you can actually see the information that was given to dispatch. So Next Gen 911 is a game changer when it comes to telematic data because it's going to put it in our hands as responders. So he says that I've got like 90 seconds left, so there's one last thing I want to point out. When we're talking about the approach to these vehicles and we get on scene, right, and we have an incident and we want to shut this vehicle down, right? So if you have an extrication out front with 2 internal combustion engine vehicles, how many of you, as a matter of practice, typically cut the battery cables? One? Yeah. Yep, somebody cuts the cable, right? 30 years in this business, we did it all the time on every extrication. Why do we do that? De-energize it, right? It controls a hazard for us, right? It goes back a long time, though. It goes back to before I was a firefighter, right? And it goes back to when vehicles weren't as sophisticated. The sophistication of the vehicle safety systems that exist today is very different than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And we were trying to control a hazard when we started doing that. We would cut the battery cables for really one primary reason. We started doing it long time ago. That was to shut off the fuel pump because there wasn't a sophisticated safety system in there that shut that down automatically during a crash, but they do today. So we still do it. We typically do. The department I came from, we were still cutting battery cables. If you choose to, or you have to de-energize, right, you want to try to shut down one of these electrified vehicles, we've given you a place to do that, all right? On the vehicles, there's badging in the front. What should draw your attention is the red fire helmet, right? That tells you that's what you should be looking at. That red fire helmet, directly underneath it, has a picture of a piece of tape with some more fire helmets on it, and it tells you where the first responder cut loop is on these vehicles. By cutting that cut loop, essentially you're cutting the low voltage system of the vehicle. It tells the battery management system of the vehicle that something's going on that's not good, right? There's a short somewhere, something's opened up, and opens up the contactors. It then isolates whatever energy was in that vehicle. If it had an 80% state of charge, that 80% state of charge is now isolated to that battery pack, right? The vehicle, everything else, should be de-energized. I'm not going to say that it is because I don't want you touching this stuff. No different than I wouldn't have anybody moving power lines down the backyard. No matter how many fuses I see hanging from the pole, we don't go grab them, right? We don't know all the safety systems work. Same thing with this. The way they're designed is you cut that low voltage cut loop, the contactor's open, it isolates the power to that high voltage battery that's underneath the vehicle, and the rest of the vehicle doesn't have that high voltage energy traveling through it. But I don't want you touching anything orange. I don't want you to think because we did that, now we can start monkeying around. There's orange stuff in these vehicles, cabling, battery components, service disconnects, all of that stuff. Anything marked orange in this vehicle, anything that's color orange designates it as high voltage and is not for us to touch. If anybody has told you that it's okay to get under a Chevy Bolt, an older version Chevy Bolt, a Chevy Volt, anything else that's out there in the field, anybody else's vehicles, any other manufacturer, that's okay to pull the service disconnect to de-energize this vehicle, it is not. Anybody ever seen a service disconnect under the seat? Anybody? Yeah, what color was it? Do you remember? Orange, right? So I'm telling you don't touch anything orange, then we have people teaching it's okay to pull the service disconnect. That service disconnect is pulled by qualified technicians to service that battery. And they're wearing the proper PPE for that we don't have. We shouldn't be messing with it. The way that we shut these vehicles down, if we absolutely have to, is to cut that first responder cut loop. On the vehicle, again, the badging is going to tell you where it is. You can find it very easily. On this vehicle, it says it's up by the firewall on the driver's side. You can find it down here. What you're looking for, it's probably easier to show you on that one, but what you're looking for, if everybody wants to gather around before they shuffle you out of here, is this yellow piece of tape. Okay. This reflective yellow piece of tape is wrapped around a wire and back on itself. All right? The way it's designed is for you to get a hold of that, pull on it like a tab, and cut the wire that it's wrapped around. We're making two cuts, one on each side of the tab, so we're walking away with that tab in our hand and maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches of wire in there. If we're going to disconnect this, we're going to disconnect it the right way. We're going to cut out a piece of that wire so there's no chance of it reconnecting without us knowing, right? We know that wires have memory. Sometimes they roll back and it might not even be on our scene. It might be at the tow yard or somewhere else. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it. But keep in mind, on an extrication, on a vehicle-based incident, if we're going to cut that, make sure you've done everything you want to do before you cut that. Anybody ever made the mistake that I made? Probably more than once in my career, where we cut 12-volt battery cables on an extrication, and I realized that the power steering wheel was still down, or the power seats were still all the way forward, or the doors were still locked. So before we want to cut any power, right, before we want to disconnect anything in this vehicle, let's make sure we've done everything we want to do with it. Doors are unlocked, windows are down, sunroof's open, seats are back, steering wheel's up, everything that requires power, because once you cut that, we're done. Can't do any of that, right? And we're really not in a rush to do that. We do it to disable the vehicle. We do it to shut down fuel pumps. Not an issue with this, not an issue with a modern vehicle. And the reality is we do it to secure the vehicle, and we can do that a much easier way by making sure it's in park, making sure it's shut off, get the key fob out of there.
Does that also de-energize the airbags?
Yes, yeah, so, and you still have the capacitors in there, and every vehicle is going to be different, right, the amount of time. But we can operate around airbags pretty safely, right? So we know that, you know, early stage airbags were a little bit less stable, right? So we worried about that. Today, I don't know if too many A-bearing airbags going off during extrication. It can happen. I think they're going to do a demonstration back here. It's pretty scary when it does. When we cut that, you still have to give it a little bit of time. You can't just cut that no different than regular 12 volt and say, all right, we're done. There are still capacitors in there. The industry says anywhere between 20 and 120 seconds, I think is what it is, or 180 seconds. So there's still a window of time. Be safe around those airbags, and even after that window of time, right? No different than, I don't care if we've cut that first responder cut loop, we're not touching orange stuff. If we've cut the low voltage, we still don't want to operate like those airbags are dead. They could still, something could happen. They're vehicles, it's a product, right? So they're designed for safety, but you could still have something that goes wrong. All right, They haven't come and got you yet. Can I answer any questions? Did I talk as fast as I said I would? I made myself sweat. I'm not used to only having 15 minutes. Anything I can answer right here?
Does Chevy and everybody else have a key fob? Like Tesla's is your phone.
We have key fobs. Yep. Yep.
Do you know if everybody else has gone to a key fob?
I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time with the manufacturers. We can look in the Rivian and see if there's a fob in there. I think there's a Ford rep here. They could tell. I think they're still using fobs for everything. There are some phone-based things that you can use on some of the vehicles, but everything that I'm aware of at General Motors, and there's still products coming out, but everything I'm aware of today still has a fob. Yeah. You should, even if it's turned on, you should still be able to manually shut it down, even if the fob is gone or anything else, right? And the vehicles, as a safety feature, even my Silverado, if I walk out of the car without the fob, or take the fob with me, I think it's a few minutes and it senses it's not there and it shuts it down. But you should still be able to push the button. Anything else?
So a couple years ago, it was big on talking about the disconnect.
Yep.
What you just said, basically, don't even,
Yeah, there's
attention to it.
a reason they print that thing in orange, man, right? It's part of the high voltage system. It is a link on the top. You're essentially pulling a fuse off the top of that. You have the potential for an arc. When you get on the other side of this wall, the guy I was standing in the back with, Rajesh, he can talk a lot about that. He came out of GM's battery lab. But those were not designed for us to just willy-nilly out in the field like, hey, I want to shut this off. That is a high voltage component, not designed for us to be back there messing with it. The new vehicles, we don't have them. You don't have them. You go out and you find whatever's newest out there. It's not going to be there. But I went to some classes early on, too, that said, oh, the easy way to shut these down, pull the service disconnect. And then start talking to the battery lab, and they're like, no, don't touch that thing. It's orange like everything else. Don't touch that and don't touch that, man. Like, that's why we made it orange. Yep. And truthfully, I can't think of a really great reason that you would have to shut down the system anyway, right? We don't have fuel pumps. We don't have those hazards. It doesn't make the energy go away. The energy is still where it was in the battery, right? The vehicle, the post-crash disconnect systems should have shut all that stuff down anyway, including the airbag modules, all those things. That should all be done automatically by the sophisticated vehicle systems. So really, it's a hang-on from history that we just continue to do. I'm not knocking it. Like I said, I just retired 2 years ago, and when I walked out the door, they were still cutting battery cables on every extrication. But we want you to start thinking about, do I have to cut it? What am I actually trying to accomplish? And can I do that a different way? And the reason you want to think about that is on the generations of vehicles above this one, right? So we're going to talk about everything that's on the Ultium platform, right? The different battery platform that's out there. So everything past the Bolt, the Cadillac Lyriq, the Chevy EV, the Blazer EV that just got here, the Hummer. They have a very, very sophisticated battery management system that's watching what's going on in that battery and can actually help prevent something bad from going on, right? So it senses these different things and it says, I don't like what the battery's doing, calls it a thermal runaway alert, and it sets off an OnStar alarm and you'll respond out there. You might already be on scene, but the other thing it does is it initiates a protective mode and starts circulating extra coolant through the battery. The probability of a thermal runaway has gone up, at least the algorithm is saying so we try to mitigate that or bring it down by running more coolant through it.
How do they react in the wintertime with the snow and water and salt?
They do fine. Joe just walked in the door. He drives one every day. I mean, he lives in southeast Michigan. It's not quite as snowy as it is up here, but we drive them all winter. We get them around.
If you forget
but you
to
don't
plug
drive
them
them like us.
What's that? Yeah, as a response vehicle, you mean?
No, as a personal vehicle.
Oh, I probably do.
I don't think so.
Oh, I might. I live up here half time anyway, so I drive pretty hard. So
You drive pretty hard. We
yeah.
drive stupid.
Yeah, I think so. And, and truthfully, you know where the battery is, right? And they're well protected. You're going to see when you go out there and look at the battery case, and I don't know what kind of battery or case they have out there. This isn't just battery stuck underneath the vehicle, right? These are in heavy metal cases that are meant to take that sort of abuse, right? Because it's either you driving the vehicle like a maniac, or it's my kids driving over curbs with it, right? It's all kinds of different things that can happen. So these, as part of the design specifications, protect the battery. So I don't want to call it bulletproof, but the battery case around the battery is extremely heavy. It's extremely thick. It protects it from most stuff. So running over something in the roadway, not really an issue, right? That doesn't mean that you couldn't have that, I don't want to call it once in a career call. We have bad things that happen. Car versus train, yeah, right? Car versus train.
You have to
Side.
keep them plugged in the wintertime.
Do they keep them plugged in? Yeah, you gotta put.
Do you have to keep them plugged in? If you leave them out there and forget for a couple of days, is the battery going to go
I don't
dead?
think there's a lot of wintertime degradation. Joe's a good one to ask that. I don't own an EV, but Joe has one at home parked in his driveway, not the one he drove here. I don't think there's a lot of wintertime degradation on the battery. There might be some.
One on a car lot, car lot vehicles usually have a tendency of sitting for a long period of time.
Right.
You're not going to want to pull that around to the garage and put it on a tender all the time.
Well, I think the way, I don't know about the car lots, but I mean, the way that the vehicles are intended is you pull it in your driveway, right? You plug it in, it's charged, you drive it, you bring it back, charge it. And if you're away from home, you need to charge, you can stop at one of these places to do it. But they're meant to be charged all the time, right? You sit at night, my neighbors have them, they pull in the driveway and they plug the thing in, it's on charge all the time. The biggest hazard is the neighbor kids coming along and thinking, hey, good luck getting to work tomorrow, and they unplug the thing, right? But aside from that, they do charge, yep. And again, they're made here. I mean, they're made here. They're designed here in Michigan, right? GM is kind of a Michigan home company, right? And these things are sold all over the place, including much further north than this, and they're out there.
So let me explain how the battery is put together, right? So there is a bunch of cells. They're all put together and they're welded, and then they're called a module. And then you take the modules because they go up in voltage as you put them together. So 50, let's say 100, whatever, and then you can add them up. And then at its lowest state of charge, this whole thing is 300 volts. At its fully charged state, it's over 400 volts. Okay, now let's say this is the plus side, negative side. This is in the middle. This is the manual service disconnect, and the future vehicles don't have this. But this one is a controller. And there is PCBs here. You see these wires, little wires. They're monitoring each of those cells. And there is a thermistor on each of these. And they're reading those. And this is looking at all of these, talking continuously.
Even right now?
Even right now, okay? But now this is disconnected, but it's not talking to the master controller on the vehicle side. Only when the vehicle is fully connected, that is controlling. And that is what closes those switches. This cannot close that switch. Okay. So this is like a smart dummy, but not a real dummy, you know what I mean? Is that a good way to say it?
A smart dummy, okay, makes sense.
Meaning it can do certain things. So it's limited in its capability. But the master, all the software is on the vehicle side, and that is what Mark interfaces with, he's talking about. And it'll tell you, hey, I found some cell here or some temperature that's going wayward, and I want to make sure that the driver knows not to use this and take it for repair. So, but this is your interface giving all of the data over there. Okay, and that computer will decide and tell that. And in the future vehicles, the Ultium products, these wired stuff is not there. It's by Wi-Fi inside the battery pack. It's just inside the battery, not on the outside. Yeah. It's a good thing from, these wires causing faults. So there is a plus and a minus to everything. But it's a much smaller controller also. So it reads that and it does the same thing. And you can see the black hoses over there. That is for the coolant to flow. And cells, when they charge and discharge, is generating heat. And that same computer will say, hey, turn the pump on. It's monitoring continuously this through here. Okay, so, and you can see all these orange stuff is all covered. The terminals are not exposed, because if you touch plus and minus is when you get hurt, right? And those switches, if they open, no voltage outside, because you cannot take out the voltage here. It takes hours and hours, because even if it's 300 volts, we don't let you take it down anymore, right? Because there is negative effects to that. It takes hours, because just like any battery at home, you discharge it, it takes hours, right? And here, 60 amp hour cell. So it takes even more number of hours. And there is total 288 cells here. Okay, so that's why you can drive so much, to 250 miles. So it's a long time. So normal or standard question that they've been asking, which I've gone through. I was one of the trainers for the first responders that we went throughout the country, is, am I okay if the vehicle is in the water? What is the potential hazard for you as first responders? It's absolutely okay. The reason is, if you detect a fault, we open those relays and the voltage is isolated. You don't have anything outside. Worst case, there is a damage. Say you went over a rock and you cut a cable or something like that, even though the chances are minimal, because the way we route them, we take some of that into consideration. You still have to touch plus and minus to create that shock potential. So even if one of them is damaged, just the positive side, you're not closing that loop. So take a hook that Dave showed earlier, attach it to the hook, pull hook that is on the vehicle or to the wheel and pull it out and let the water drain. Don't start the vehicle though, because that is what could create the potential for a short circuit. So send it to Mark and the experts. They know what to check before they do it. Because we put all that information and we give it to them. Again, I'm going a V. Habit. Okay, when cells fail, there is chemical reactions that happen, and the outcomes are gases, and it also creates heat, which is why you say use water. Try to get water to where the heat is coming from. Somebody asked earlier, can I put a blanket on the outside? It only buys you time because it's not cooling this. Actually, you're letting the heat build up because you're not cooling it down. So it can, if one guy fails heat, next guy is going to get heat up. And it's going to heat others because it's not getting that heat out. So that potential is there in any vehicle. So, but that heat depends on so many other things, especially state of charge. So the higher the state of charge, the potential for heat is higher.
In a normal operation, how long should one of these batteries last? Is it the life of the car? Is it 5 years?
So that is also being monitored. So it depends on how you use it. So just like you and me, you run a marathon every week. What's going to happen to you?
Well, I should be in shape, but eventually I'll get tired of it.
No, well, but your bones and joints are going to wear down faster than, because it's an extensive load, right? So same thing with the vehicle. If you charge it fast charge every day, and if you drive it at wide open throttle every day, you're going to wear it out faster, right? But if you go the other way, you're conservative, it's going to last longer.
Okay. Are you guys starting to see trends in average battery lives, or?
So I'll tell you this, even though I'm talking for GM here. The Volt batteries that I know of, we have had no issues, and that was, first production was 2010, 2011. And that I know of, there's vehicles out there, 300, 400,000 still running, and they're not even close to end of life.
Okay.
Because the temperature is one of the functions, and the charging, like I said.
But the battery keeps track of when it nears its end of life cycle. It would alert
It is supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the same as the first finding a fault condition.
Okay.
Most of the OEMs are supposed to do that, but I have a bad example based on experience, right? You buy some batteries, not throwing mud at China, but I know how some of the cells are manufactured over there, somebody's backyard, and they come through Amazon and people buy them. You don't know, reputable or not, let us say, right? And if they don't have the proper software that is monitoring it, then things can happen, right?
So in the event that we had a battery somehow in an accident or whatnot, dislodge or damage or whatever, how would we properly secure the battery or have it disposed of? Are there?
So the Mitch talked about the cards there, right? There is a recycle something website on there, and there are people. It's getting expanded across the country more and more, and they will take the battery.
Okay.
There is ways to ship it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what, even your batteries from home, your tool batteries, etc. Home Depot or Lowe's and stuff, they have this container, right? So put it in some kind of container so that it doesn't short against something else, and put it in there because it goes to a recycle facility.
So I see you have it wrapped in plastic. Would that be kind of
No,
what you would do?
so this one is required by DOT shipping.
Okay.
So this is a recall battery, that's a new battery. So by defective damage, this container is been tested and it's supposed to be shipped this way.
Okay. So then if this battery can't be salvaged or repaired, what is done with it? Are they just buried somewhere, stuck in a
No.
warehouse?
There is ways to recycle everything on here.
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know there is one close to Novi down in Oakland County, but I don't know all of them. You'll have to go through the Recycle My Battery website. I've heard there is more and more people getting into that business.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, so we've got some extra airbags here that they're actually out of a Chevrolet Silverado truck. They're a curtain airbag that we replaced on a recall. Normally this would be mounted up along the roof line. The charge is towards the back of the cab area. We've taken all the bracketry bolting off them, so when we set these off for demonstration purposes, we don't have bolts and brackets and shrapnel flying on them. The number one thing to remember when you're coming up on one of these is, whether it's a gas or electric, is if there's battery power at all, those can go off. We're gonna set it off with a 9-volt battery, even though they're a 12-volt system, 9 volts will make them go bang. So you wanna, make sure you disconnect the battery. GM recommends if there's 2 minutes to let everything be dead. You may not have that time frame in a real situation, but that's what they recommend. And so one thing that Adam and I are kind of learning as we go along here, this is the first one. I learned a lesson myself tonight. This is the charge cartridge out of a little lumbar airbag on a seat. It banged enough, this thing hopped out on the ground. And like a dummy, I went and picked it up and burned the heck out of my finger, because this thing is hot after they go off. So that's you not only have the explosion risk, but you have a burn risk if you were to touch this in a situation like that. We're gonna hook one up, set it in here. It'll jump in a real world situation in the car. It's bolted in securely and the bag's just gonna blow out. The cartridge itself, unless the vehicle is, really damaged somehow, is going to stay securely in there. So this is going to be a more violent reaction than you would see, but there's still a lot of power here. So we found a couple extras, so we're going to set 2 of them. Okay, if everybody's ready, on the count of 3, Adam. 1, 2, 3. That's a good one. He yanked the controller right out of his hand. Yeah, so that gives you an idea of what kind of power is there. Again, in a real live scenario, it's going to stay secure in the car. You're going to have the bag here, which I'll show you guys. So the curtain bags, they stay inflated for 5-10 minutes. Your steering wheel bag, your passenger bag, those have a lot bigger holes and they inflate and instantly deflate. But these do stay blown up a little bit. It was a question asked by another group, if this is in my way, can I cut it out? Can I get it off? Yes, absolutely. It's a single charge. Once it goes off, you can cut the bag out of the way and you're not gonna do any harm. If you need to clear.
Even if you cut the battery on it, you still can't cut through the cylinder. No.
Correct. That's you want to stay away from the cylinder. Again, on this application, which is a Silverado 2015 to 18 vintage. This is towards the back of the cab, up high, like above the back window. But yeah, you want to be aware where this is on a car before you go in there and start cutting on it. Exactly, because that's just if you're cutting, if there's a spark, anything like that, it could detonate. And as you just saw, this is a pretty powerful little firecracker. Yeah. So you want to do one more? Okay. Maybe have a little better grip on the controller this time? Okay. All right. All right. Okay, hold on. Cameraman ready? Ready. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. You can see that, I mean, rattles the sides of the dumpster, yeah. So there's a lot of power there for sure. Anybody have any questions? You know, that is something I do not have the answer for. You know, we're told that it's about the equivalent comparison to the power in a 20 gauge shotgun shell. But as far as the actual composition, I'm not privy to what that is.
Do you have to destroy those after they've been recalled?
So yeah, this is the process, not just for demonstration, but when we replace them.
Come outside and make noise all the time.
So yeah.
Hey, take them over to Jason. We'll go make some noise with them.
Yeah. So I mean, if anybody wants a cheap camping mattress, yeah, you know, it'll probably you won't make it through the night. So, all right.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Keith Newberry. I'm retired GM, and I worked on electric vehicles. Actually, my entire team worked on the development of electric vehicles. And they thought, well, throw me a challenge today, give a Tesla to me. I do know a little bit about Teslas because they were, and still are, our primary competitor. And they've done a great job with electrification. And I have experience from our development fleet. So from a first responder, you've probably heard a lot of the presentations here today, and we all have, you know, some unique things. So the first thing I would ask you to do is you get the dispatch. The first thing is we all have smartphones, smart devices. It'd be great if I knew I was going to a Tesla Model Y. Can I download the first responder guide? And more importantly, there's also a quick reference guide. You need that quick reference guide as you're approaching the vehicle or the situation. So as you're en route, it would be great to have that. The second thing is, with the electric vehicle, you can't hear, you don't know if it's running or not, because electric vehicles are silent. So the first thing I like to do is grab a couple chocks. As I'm approaching the vehicle to take care of the occupant, I like to chock that vehicle, okay? Then I'm trying to take care of the occupant. I don't know if the vehicle's in gear. You know, as you're trying to take care of the occupant's needs, my first thought is, how do I get the vehicle in park? Well, on this vehicle and all Teslas, the park is basically on the shift lever on the right side of the column. You just push a button. So for us Chevy truck and GMC truck owners, it's like the tow haul button. I need to get that button pushed as I'm taking care of the occupant. So as I'm I'm also being aware that is the screen lit up. If the screen's lit up, I'm going to assume the vehicle's on. That's why I'm trying to get it in park. As you're taking care of the occupant's needs, you know, you can potentially move the seat, the steering column, take care of the occupant's needs at the time you stabilize the vehicle. I'm also doing a situational awareness. How bad's the accident? Have the airbags deployed? Well, if the airbags deployed, it basically will disable high voltage or the propulsion system. When the airbags deploy, there's two contactors in the high voltage battery, positive and negative, like circuit breakers in your house. When the airbag deploys, it basically opens those contactors. So what that means is the voltage is contained in the high voltage battery. However, you never cut or go near or touch an orange wire. There is no need on any electric vehicle to interface with the orange wire. So the other thing that you, after, as you've taken care of the occupant's needs, you look at it. Our first responder loop on this Tesla Model Y is right here, under the hood. There's a little beauty cover, so if the occupant, or if you're familiar with, you hit the hood open button, or if you don't know how to get the hood open and you're trying to assess, you think the vehicle's powered on, we know how to get hoods open without the release, right? So when you're dealing with a cut loop, what do we do on cut loops? We cut both sides of the cut loop. So on a cut loop, when I cut this cut loop, I want this tag on the ground. I want to make sure it's, when I cut it, I just don't do it once, I cut it twice, okay? On the Model 3, like the Rivian, the Model 3, not this one, there's a second cut loop in the rear quarter window. So that's why each vehicle, you need to understand, each vehicle is a little bit unique and different. That's why you want to have the first responder guide. So as I'm assessing the situation, I first of all taken care of the occupant's needs, right? Got them safely handled, they're en route to due care, etc. The next thing I'm doing is, as I'm doing that, I'm looking at the integrity of the vehicle. So you've seen vehicles on display here today. This vehicle is no different. The battery is positioned in the safest location of the vehicle, between the A pillar and the C pillar, between the rockers, kind of surrounded by high-strength steel. However, there are certain situations and certain crashes that could breach the integrity of the battery. It's rare, but you're assessing that situation. If you're dealing with a potentially breached battery, so that the rocker's crushed in, there's structural integrity that's affecting the battery, you need to be aware that even though high voltage is disabled, that high voltage and all of that energy potential is still in that pack. And when that pack is compromised, your risk for a fire greatly increases. So as I'm assessing the situation, I'm looking, I'm listening, I think the battery may be compromised. I need to be aware that that battery could ignite anytime, whether it's today, tonight, or 3 weeks from now. Okay? So do we have any tow? I know earlier groups. So if you're dealing with when the tow truck comes, if it's a battery integrity, just mention, hey, that vehicle needs to be placed in the back 40, 50 feet away from any combustible material. So, as first responders or fire people, we just need to be aware. That's why we need to park it away from any combustible vehicle. Most crashes aren't that don't compromise the structural integrity, and you would just handle those like a normal crash. The contactor's open, the vehicle's powered off, etc., and you just would handle that like a normal vehicle because the energy. Now, if you do have a compromised battery, I would suggest reaching out to the manufacturer, the tow or insurance yard, and say, hey, is there protocols for depowering that energy? Because that energy is still there, and they may have protocols for depowering batteries, so forth. And until that situation's analyzed, you just gotta make sure nobody parks near it. The other thing is, in the rare case you have a battery fire, you need to obviously use water, get the vehicle put out, but you need to cool the battery. The problem is, where's the battery at? It's on the bottom, and pouring it in the glass of the vehicle isn't cooling the battery. So if you decide to jack the vehicle up, you need to be aware of jacking points. Do not use a jack under the battery because you're just going to compound your issue. But if you want to tilt the vehicle up, there are jacking points. We do show jacking points. Like I say, a battery fire is extremely rare. If you're dealing with a house fire and the vehicle's or a vehicle fire in a house, like Dave said, just hook it on and drag it out. If it's charging, just disconnect the charge cord. We all got the fire people call the poles. If you can't get that closed, just knock it off. They all have, the chargers have breakaway handles in it, and if you just knock it out, it's a design breakaway for that. So, but once again, you just need to be aware, situational awareness, never expose yourself to high voltage, and in a lot of respects is very similar to regular vehicles we deal with each and every day. Yes?
Couple questions. How hard are the doors to open once you've cut the battery? Should we make sure all the doors are open first?
Okay, so on this vehicle, when you cut the battery, you're cutting the battery 12-volt power from the airbags and the high voltage contactors. It does have some 12-volt battery retained in that loop, so you're cutting a loop. So, you all know how to open a Tesla, but if there's no 12-volt, break the window, come in here, and there's a manual release in the power. It's actually the power window switch. So you just lift the whole, I don't want to do it on this customer's vehicle, but it's only for the front doors. On Tesla, it's only the front doors, not the rear doors, okay, the manual release. So there is a manual release.
Two more questions.
Yes.
If there's battery damage, is there any electrocution if we're spraying water or if the car's in water? Or anything like that?
No. There's no. First of all, we do full submersion. Every manufacturer does full battery submersion testing. I can remember the test cell. It's like a big, huge, giant swimming pool. We take the battery for a swim. So, when a battery is fully submerged, it can't maintain more voltage than the smallest cell because they short out. So you read about the hurricanes in Florida. Flooded vehicles bring a big, a greater challenge because when the water drains out of the battery, that's when the fire can happen. So.
Last question. Teslas don't have a model number anywhere on them, so how do we know if it's an S or an X or a Q or a Z or whatever? If we're looking up like but these aren't marked.
They're all the same.
No, they actually, the Model 3
they're probably going to have the same loops in the same spots.
They are in similar, but there are.
At our books on the way there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to,
Yeah. In other words, yeah. No,
I just wanted to raise the point.
I knew the Y was the SUV, and so.
Do all manufacturers, like I know Tesla, do they all have to have an emergency door release? Like, does GM have an emergency door release like Tesla does, or do they not required to?
So for example, the Corvette has a manual door release. Maybe Dave or Matt, you can help me out. But there are certain models that have, like a Corvette has the push button inner door. That does have a manual release on Corvette.
Well, like on the Chevy Bolt or whatever, the EVs, do they have, like on this one, you said it was inside.
A Bolt is pretty conventional,
Right, okay.
Conventional door. It's
So
not like
not
this.
electric,
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Okay, I got
Other questions?
Okay, let's go in the back room.
Hey, thank you. Once again, I encourage each one of you, go look at a first responder guide. So thanks.